everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium live stream. My name is Jessica. I am the director of the Planetarium, and with me tonight is a probably familiar face if you've been here before, but I will still let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a physics graduate student at UMD.
And you may also be hearing one of my cats in the background. She has decided that she also wants to take part in the show tonight. So I apologize for her rude interruptions there. But tonight we are going to be celebrating some of the amazing women who made very important contributions to astronomy, but often are not talked about. Many people don't know about them despite what they did, and a lot of their work being fundamental to a lot of the things that we know. Um, and so Lindsay is going to be telling us about some of these women. If you do have any questions throughout the show tonight, you can leave them down in the comments below. I'll be keeping an eye on those. And then we'll also take time at the end of the show to answer questions as well. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to Lindsay.
I can't share.
Oh, sorry. There we go. You should be able to share now.
Okay, there you go.
Looks good.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're starting back in the 2nd century BC. And kind of the purpose of the show is to let you guys know about as many women as I can. And so I'm not going into any of these women too in depth. I just want to tell you all about all of them. Okay, so we're in the 2nd century BC. We have Eglinich. So she had such a great knowledge of the moon phases, and when eclipses and things were going to be, that people thought she was a sorceress because she would just, point up to the sky when there would be an eclipse that was about to happen, and then the eclipse would happen. And people thought she was the one that was controlling the moon and the sun. That's one of my favorites. 4th century AD now. So here we have Hypatia. She was a professor of astronomy in ancient Greece. She taught mathematics and astronomy at a local school. So she was one of the first female mathematicians that we actually have a lot of information for. So there may have been, we can't say she was the first female mathematician probably, but she is the first one that we know a lot about. And then in addition to teaching at the school, she opened up her classroom to the public for free so that she could teach math and astronomy to the public. Okay, jumping up to the 10th century. Okay, so Miriam al-Astrolabi, she manufactured astrolabes. She was living at the time in Syria. Into the 16th century. Okay, Sophia Brahe is the sister of somebody else that you may have heard of already, Tycho Brahe. So Tycho Brahe, he was employed by the Danish royal family at one point, and was kind of at their royal observatory for a little bit. And he was tracking Mars and collected a lot of data on lots of stuff. And so he's really famous for that. But his sister was there too. She was there making observations, taking data, looking at data also. And so it's kind of sad that Sophia Brahe was there with her brother and doesn't get recognized nearly as much as he did. And their observations led to a discovery of a supernova. 17th century. Okay, so Maria Kunitz, she authored a book that included new calculations for finding the positions of the planets. She was born in Silesia, so this was back in like 1610. And then she also has a crater on Venus named after her. Okay, Elizabeth Hevelius. She is known as the mother of moon charts. And she and her husband, Johannes Hevelius, cataloged more than 1,500 stars. So this is another instance where Johannes and his wife Elizabeth were cataloging and taking data, but only the man got the recognition. Okay, into the 18th century to France, Nicole Renée Leavitt, the French show, so she was a French astronomer who predicted the return of Halley's comet. And she also was able to calculate timings of solar eclipses and also constructed a group of catalogs for stars. Marie Jeanne Amélie La Française de Lalande, she established a catalog of 10,000 stars. Glenn Herschel, yeah, another woman who was helping out. In this case, Carolyn was helping out her brother, William Herschel, and you probably have heard of William Herschel also. He is famous for discovering Uranus, but you know what? Carolyn helped him with that. She also helped him with some other observations, and actually, she herself discovered several comets. And so when you are looking at comets, like on star chart or anything like that, or in the news, any comet that is named Herschel is not named for William Herschel, it's actually named for Carolyn Herschel. She created a new star map, and she was actually the first woman to get paid to do astronomy. So she was kind of recognized in her time, but history kind of forgot about her, unfortunately. Princess Charlotte of Saxe-Meiningen. I got to work on my French pronunciations. So she participated in observations with the astronomers in the French court. She was also the only woman that attended the first European Astronomy Congress in 1798. Okay, so now we're heading into the 19th century. So Emily du Chaillet, she translated Newton's Principia into French. So what that means is, so Isaac Newton, his work about the laws that are now named after him, Newton's laws, was put into a book that he published. Well, she translated that book into French, and she also fixed some of his mistakes. And she also was an astronomy teacher in France for a little bit. Maria Mitchell, she discovered a comet in 1847, and she won a gold medal prize from the King of Denmark. Okay, Agnes Mary Clerk. So she wrote a book called A Popular History of Astronomy during the 19th century. Mary Adela Flegg, she observed the moon and created a list of all of the lunar features. And she also created a system for naming things on the moon. So anytime we go, like we find a new crater maybe on the moon because we have better resolution, we still use the system that she used to name things on the moon. And so, yeah, a lot of the things that are named on the moon were named by Mary. Place, the Harvard Observatory from 1877 to 1919. So there were a group of women that were pretty much human computers at the Harvard Observatory. So Edward Pickering hired a bunch of these women to look at data. So the women were not allowed to look at the telescopes. The men would operate the telescopes at night and take all the data, and then they would give all of the data to these women, and they would go through all of these pictures. This is, obviously way before computers or calculators or anything. They would go through all of these pictures individually, making measurements about the stars and things like that with a paper and pencil. And so if you ask me, they were kind of doing the hard work. One of kind of the derogatory terms that was used for them is Pickering's harem. But a lot of really, really, really important discoveries came from these women working at the Harvard Observatory. So Antonia Maury, she published an early catalog of stellar spectra. Wilhelmina Fleming, she cataloged thousands of stars and helped create a classification system for stars. And she discovered the Horsehead Nebula right here. Henrietta Leavitt, another one of my favorites. She discovered Cepheid variable stars and discovered that they could be used to measure distances. So before this, we did not have a way of measuring very, very, very large distances in space. And so we actually didn't know at this time if the Andromeda Nebula, as it was known back then, was actually part of the Milky Way galaxy, or if it was entirely its own galaxy, because we didn't have a way of measuring how far away it was. But Henrietta Leavitt figured out that there was a relationship in like the brightness of Cepheid variable stars. That's like the same for every single Cepheid variable star. And so we can use those Cepheid variable stars to measure now these really, really large distances to other galaxies. So then we figured out that in fact, this Andromeda Nebula is not a nebula in the Milky Way galaxy, but actually it's an entirely separate galaxy, and now we know it as the Andromeda Galaxy. So you hear about Edwin Hubble a lot and how he figured out that, how far away galaxies were and things, but nobody ever hears about Henrietta Leavitt, and he wouldn't have been able to make his discoveries about how far away galaxies were if she hadn't made her discovery about the Cepheid variable stars. Annie Jump Cannon, she established a stellar classification system that we still use today. Cecilia Payne Kapashkin, she just discovered the composition of the sun. No big deal. So prior to this, astronomers thought that everything in the solar system kind of had the same amounts of elements. So all of the elements and the percentages of elements that we have here on Earth, we assumed that the sun would have the same amount of elements like as the Earth. She found out though that the sun is mostly hydrogen and helium and very little of the elements that we find a lot of here on Earth. And so she was the first one to discover that, and people just didn't believe her for a couple of years. And then her advisor started to kind of believe her, but then published her work as his work. And so she didn't really get credit for that. Okay, Muriel Mussels Seifert, she discovered the Ring Nebula. All right, now we are heading into the 20th century. So now we're kind of into after the Pickering-Tarrant era. So we have Elizabeth Alexander. She is from Australia. She worked with radar technology during World War II. And then with her knowledge that she gained doing that, she became a pioneer in radio astronomy. Ruby Payne Scott, also Australian. And she was a pioneer in radio physics. Also, she was the first female radio astronomer. Priscilla Fairfield Bach. She and her husband authored some papers about star clusters and star magnitudes. Ava Einart Rolfs. She made observations of variable stars. And she also eventually got a doctorate in astrophysics. Elizabeth Roemer, she discovered 2 asteroids and a moon of Jupiter that is named Themisto. She also calculated data about the magnitude of comet nuclei, so the center part of the comet. Erica Baum-Vitens, she studied convection in stellar atmospheres. She also realized that UV light is the best way to observe the chromospheres of stars. Vera Rubin, she discovered dark matter. So when we were looking at galaxies, based on Newton's laws and the amount of matter that excuse me, we can see here in this galaxy, we can predict that the velocities of these stars on the outer part of the galaxy are going to be a particular speed, but they were not. Oops, sorry. So Vera Rubin discovered that there must be some other kind of matter out here that we can't see that would account for that, and also why the velocities of these stars at the edges of the spiral galaxy are faster than we would expect. So dark matter is just matter we know is there, but we can't observe. We don't have a way to observe it right now. Okay, Carolyn Shoemaker. She once held the record for most comets discovered by an individual, including Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9. You may remember Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 because it crashed into Jupiter. Rita F. Lieb, she was an expert, or is expert on atmospheres of the gas giant planets. She helped study Jupiter when the comet Shoemaker-Levy, so Carolyn Shoemaker's comet, hit Jupiter. So she helped study kind of what happened to Jupiter's atmosphere when that comet hit. Margaret Burbridge, she showed that all of the elements except for the very lightest are produced by nuclear processes inside stars, and helped develop the faint object spectrograph for the Hubble Space Telescope, and discovered that the galaxy M82 has a massive black hole in its center. So for the elements, so the hydrogen and helium, they were made during the Big Bang, and a little bit of lithium. But where did we get all these other elements that we see on Earth? So she discovered that some of those elements were then created in nuclear processes inside stars. Jocelyn Bell Burnell, she discovered the first radio pulsars. Nancy Roman, she was one of the first female executives at NASA. She is known to many as the mother of Hubble for her role in playing the Hubble Space Telescope. Steffi Baum, she helped develop the Hubble Space Telescope also, and she is the director, or was the director, of the Rochester Institute of Technology's Center for Imaging Science. Maria Antonella Barrucci, she discovered 3 minor planets. Tabitha Boyajian, she discovered what is now known as Tabby's star. So she was observing this star right here, and she noticed that it had a very unusual light curve. The light was not constant, but it also didn't seem to have kind of the variation in brightness that we see in other variable stars. So some stars just kind of vary in their brightness intrinsically. So this wasn't really matching up with any of that. So they were trying to figure out, like, is there a giant planet in front of it? Like, what's going on? They still haven't figured it out. One of the things that people want it to be is alien spacecraft going around the star so we can visit some aliens. But I think that's been debunked now. Okay, and this is Katie Bowman. She created the algorithm for imaging black holes and led the team that completed the task. And that was, I think, 2 years ago now.
I
Jessica?
think it was. That's.
Yeah.
I still feel like this happened like yesterday.
No. Did we get any questions?
I am not seeing any questions come in. If you do have any questions for us, now is a great time to leave them down in the comments. Yeah, I still think my favorite is the Moon Witch. Like,
So it's
I want to be that.
Mhm.
But no, there's been so much, and like the composition of the sun. Like,
Yeah, like
seriously?
why doesn't she get credit for that? That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. But no, then this is exactly why we do the
You
show.
may also have noticed that a lot of their last names were hyphenated. And that's because if they publish work with their maiden name and then they get married, if they publish under their married name, they might not know who they are. And so they generally hyphenate.
Yes. We did get a
And still,
question.
to this day, like,
Oh, no, no, go ahead. Finish up your thought.
oh, like still to this day, we get a lot of women that are being ignored, and men are still taking
Yeah,
credit for things. So we still have a long way to go, unfortunately.
we do. So we were asked if there are any books on these women that you would recommend.
Yes. So there is a book. Um, I can't remember exactly the title, but it's like 50 women who like learned about space. Maybe I will post a link in the comments.
Yeah,
That way I can get it exactly. And maybe I'll paste the links too. There's a couple of Facebook pages that I follow. One is called, and that highlights women from all different areas of like everything, biology, astronomy, actresses. And then another one that I follow is from National Geographic. It's called Women of Impact.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind finding those and linking those for people, that would be great. And while she is working on that, any other questions, let us know. But I will also tell you a little bit about what's coming up over this next week. So Saturday, we will be taking everyone on a journey through the or to the moons of our solar system. There are a lot of really cool moons in our solar system that definitely deserve some time that we don't always have when we do just planets. So we do a whole show dedicated to these awesome moons. And then Monday is kind of a big day next week. December 21st, we have the Great Conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, where Jupiter and Saturn are going to be so close together from our vantage point here on Earth that they're going to appear as a single, very bright object. So if you're able to get out and see it that day, definitely recommend it. But we will also be doing a telescope stream that evening if weather permits. And then later that evening at 7, we will be doing a special winter solstice stream because the 21st is also the winter solstice. And so we're going to have Bob King, also known as Astro Bob, who's going to tell us some awesome information about the conjunction. He's promised maybe even a picture that he took earlier that evening if he can get it ready in time. But also tell us about what the solstice means and all of that. And then we'll also have Jim Rock giving his Indigenous perspective and what this means to him, and some stories along with that as well. And that is all of the shows that we have coming up over the next week. After our special stream on the 21st, we will be taking the last 2 weeks of December off to give our wonderful student staff who have been entirely instrumental in doing all of these streams. I'm going to give them the holiday break off, but then we will be back at the first full week of January with our regular programs on Wednesday and Saturday. We've got some new stuff in the works that I'm excited to do. A couple of other things. We are now offering private virtual shows that you can book, either, say, for a virtual birthday party or family get-together. We're also doing virtual field trips for classes. You can always go to our website and find out more information about that. And lastly, we are still selling our Stellar Distancing t-shirts to help raise money. You can find the link to that in the video description. This is just to help us raise money since we have been closed since mid-March. And so we haven't been able to get, ticket sales and stuff. So this is just helping us continue to do what we do and let us kind of be on good footing once we can open back up to the public, and we'll be able to jump right back in and do what we were doing. But I am not seeing any more questions. Let me double check on here because sometimes they don't show up on my phone. Nope, not seeing any. So Lindsay is going to get the links and stuff posted. You'll find that you just post it as a comment on this video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. And so you can find those when she gets that up and done. But otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you learned of at least one awesome new woman, scientist that you maybe didn't know about before. And we hope to see you again in a future show. So bye everyone.